Folks, if you play fingerstyle guitar and you want to add variation into the mix, but you don't know how to break away from those basic patterns you'll learn or a simple tab or tutorial, I got you. I'm going to show you exactly how I do it using 4 stupidly simple steps that have helped so many of my students turn their playing from this and have given them an unfair advantage, like definitely from how I learned, and to start sounding something more like this. So here's the truth of it, like freeing up your fingerstyle guitar, it really isn't that hard if you have a handle on some very basic things. But the number one question I get asked in my studio and also over my Patreon, I was asked it very recently, which is the impetus of this video, is how do I take this basic tab and add variation so I'm not just repeating it over and over and over? Because let's be honest, that's not what the blues greats did. They didn't play things the same way twice. In fact, they rarely did. If you check out different versions of the same tunes, there's not a lot of commonalities, but somehow the tune is always the same. So take a simple tune, add the concepts I use, and add it to the tune as we go. Take a simple melody into something more memorable. Because you know what they say, it's not beautiful because it's old. It's old because it's beautiful. Except for this guitar, which is both. Folk musician and fingerstyle helper here on YouTube. Today we're talking the 4 S's. You could do it with any style, of course. I've used it for all kinds of styles here in my studio, but it works great for fingerstyle. And the first one we're going to do will probably surprise you more than the others, but it's probably the most effective one you could use, and you can use it today no matter what level you're at. And this is simplifying. Sometimes you want to try to simplify. Now it might seem counterintuitive, like, dude, I want to add variation. Why would I take notes away? But if you think about fingerstyle guitar, it's kind of a busy style of playing guitar. Now if you take this rag, this is like a basic 5-chord rag. If you look at it, it's kind of a busy pattern. And most fingerstyle tunes, they're kind of busy, right? So sometimes, instead of adding notes to the equation, it's really effective to take a few away. Now, unfortunately, it's not as simple as just taking out notes. You can't just take out random notes. Like think of Happy Birthday. Everybody knows Happy Birthday. Now, if I just took out notes at random, I would lose the melody. Now, we've all heard Happy Birthday sound pretty bad. I know that. It's true. That's why I use this example. But let's check out how a musician who's a little more informed could leave out notes and make it still hold the melody. Now, regarding this rag we're working on, it's the same idea. Let's do what I call it streamlining. We're going to streamline the melody down to its core fundamentals, or this fingerstyle pattern. Simplifying can be a really powerful way to add breath to the music, but if what you want to do is add some step to the music, you got to do what I call stepping. Now, stepping is just finding notes that are just a step away, a step before or after your target note. Now, the first and easiest thing you could do is to hammer to any of these fingers. Depending on which finger you hammer to, it's going to have a different effect. So the first finger is a half-step hammer. Kind of sounds like a John Fahey tune, doesn't it? The second finger is a good one, really common. It's a whole step hammer. Now the third step is the biggest step. If you're thinking of a staircase, this last step is not to code, is not OSHA approved. We're going up a step and a half here. Do something like this. But, as all of us have done in our past and will probably have done to us in the future, sometimes you gotta help your grandma up the step, and what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna step between that with our second finger. Something like this. Kind of sounds like something Woody Guthrie would do. Now, you've probably heard it a billion times, right? They're very common. All of these are very common things. You just may never have thought about it before. And if you just sit and think about it, you can start adding it into your own playing, right? There's just little logical approaches, and then you'll start to just add them automatically. If you want to add it to this rag here, here's a couple ideas. there are times when it doesn't. When those times arrive, you're gonna be glad you know how to slide. Now sometimes slides are our only option. If you're using like a bar chord, right? Sliding is the only option to add the kind of expression you need, but also sometimes it's just that kind of expression that you want. In the case of this tune, the A chord, that slide makes a lot of sense, and it's kind of the expression that fits that chord. I don't know, it's just a great sounding thing with that chord. You could also though add the slide to that D7 chord, just the same. So you can put those things. Let's do some stepping and sliding, right? We're gonna keep those steps, but we're gonna add some slides. Now before we slide on into the next one, I had to do it. I had to say that. I want to remind you that all these examples are available on the Patreon for free members. So anything you see here on the screen, there's going to be a little PDF for you there on the Patreon. All right, last tip here. And I wasn't meaning to rank this like from 1 to 4, like the best one being the last one, but honestly, it did kind of work out that way. One of the most important things you can learn how to do is like learning how to steal. In hip hop, they call it sampling. In jazz, they call it quoting. In pop music, they call it interpolation or interpolation. That was a new one to me. And sometimes it's just straight up plagiarism, right? Of course, but a lot of times it's just acknowledgement, right? Like a tip of the hat, that the agreement that we're taking part in something bigger than ourselves. And in folk music, we call it borrowing. Borrowing is usually referred to like lyrical borrowing. It's also called traveling. It's about verses, right? It's about traveling verses. They're called floaters sometimes. As far as licks go, I don't know if there's a word for it. It's just so common in the tradition to just steal and borrow licks that it doesn't even have a word. It could have a word. If there's a more academically minded person out there that knows the word for lick borrowing, do tell. Obviously, some licks are just so iconic that you can't help but hear the actual song, right? This Robert Johnson tune. If you know the tune, that's what it is. Although I have a post on Patreon about this, it might actually be a Scrapper Blackwell tune. But anyway, it doesn't matter, right? The whole point of it is these things are up for grabs. And there's a few different ways to do it, from stealing from songs that have the same progression. Like this tune is also Rag Mama Rag. We could steal the introductory part of Rag Mama Rag and put it in this song. This sweet walk down. We could add that into this song. It's also almost a form of simplifying, right? Instead of doing like a pattern, we're simplifying it down to just quarter notes. But you can also steal licks from songs that have nothing to do with the current tune you're playing. Check out this Rev Gary Davis lick. That lick, let's put it on the G chord from this rag and check out how awesome it works. Along with the Blind Boy Fuller lick we stole too. Now, to be honest, I've never done that. I've never just like copy and pasted a lick and put it onto a song that I know of. But I'm sure I've done it because as you start to learn this stuff, it just becomes in your hands, like your fingers' DNA, your guitar playing DNA, and it just comes out in the way you express music on the guitar. Of course, none of this is going to work out very well for you if you don't have your right hand down pat, which is exactly why I made this video, Demystifying Fingerstyle Guitar. You can get all these variations over on the Patreon, and we'll see you